What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Let's talk about this. So Anthony Ralphs, he's the director of product management at Ripple, tech, crypto, fintech, payments, a modern money nerd. See, I'm learning how to speak again. He gave this interview here, and this is actually on August 11th, and sometimes I forget I want to make these. I just restarted my computer and it popped up, and here we go. This is one of the original designers of the RippleNet system. RippleNet is a messaging system that competes with Swift, but you can also use XRP for instant settlement. Now, I get a lot of comments saying people can use RippleNet and they'll never have to use XRP. You're absolutely right. Good for you for leaving that comment. I really appreciate you. But banks are tired of the correspondent system. They don't want to wait 2, 3, 4 days for that money to get there. They want to go ahead and get instant settlement. That's going to be a lot cheaper too than using something like Visa, MasterCard, and these older payment rails. These companies, these institutions, these banks, they're all moving to instant settlement, guys. And to get instant settlement, you need that thing called XRP or Stellar or Hedera, whatever it is that you're going to be using. But we're going to talk a lot about, there's going to be some CBD stuff in here. It's going to talk about RippleNet, all kinds of good information. I'm going to pause it where I think I should give you some extra context, but for the most part, let's just let it play through, rock on, all right? Chill. Also, guys, we are still doing this giveaway for the next 25 days. If you refer anyone to this channel and they subscribe, make sure they leave a comment who sent them. That way, the top winners can get a one-on-one if you guys want to do that. Looking forward to it.
Let's start to my far, Anthony, please.
Hi everyone, Anthony Ralphs from Ripple. I'm the head of our product offering for our digital currency platform. I'm probably introduced myself as a self-confessed payments nerd.
He's a payments nerd.
I work in them for the last 20 years. I have a broad background in technology before that, but the 20 years working with everything from mom and pop shops to global banks, looking at how they integrate, how they provide services to their customers, and integrating into domestic payment systems and cross-border payment systems. Most recently, when I joined Ripple 6 years ago, I was responsible for helping build out the RippleNet global cross-border payments network. As part of that responsibility was looking at the standardization and the rule book around the standardization of processing cross-border payments. So some of the things that were touched on the previous panel was something I was involved in day to day in terms of looking at how do we make that frictionless and easy and accessible.
We know that the Ripple has a complete platform for mining, managing, transaction, and even destroying CBDCs. And this solution is based on the XRP ledger technology, which is a decentralized and public blockchain. So, Anthony, how does Ripple make this solution available to central banks?
It's a good question, and I'm glad we're going to get into this because I see a lot of people in the comments saying that central bank digital currencies that are created on federated sidechains, the XRP ledger, won't use XRP. Guys, I appreciate all the comments, I do. But if you are going to make a point over somebody, at least understand and make the point factual, right? And maybe you need to research, but we're not here to undercut each other. I see a lot of people undercut each other in the comments. Hey guys, it's all love. We're all trying to grow here. We're all at different knowledge levels, but federated sidechains use XRP. Any sidechain on the XRP ledger is going to use XRP, right? If there is a sidechain of another blockchain, it's going to probably use that currency as well. That's how that works.
So I guess we start from a really strong foundation. The XRP ledger there's association with Ripple. One of the original founders, creators, still works at Ripple.
David Schwartz.
Actively contributing to the wider community. And with that, we get a ledger that's been in use for 10 years. It's processed billions of dollars of value across it. So we're not writing something from scratch here. So what we're doing, and because it's open source, there's contribution, there's active delivery and change to that ledger through the community. So we take that, and what we want to do is provide expertise to central banks and decision makers who are looking to experiment, understand.
Hold on, the fire truck's going by. There's always something going down in Honolulu, y'all. It gets really hot, and people like have heat stroke. Like, it gets hot out there. All right, it's passed. Let me play again.
Use this technology to remove really some of that sort of thinking around how do I solve some of the double spend problems, actually think about the application of the implementation of it, because ultimately, and I've heard this on just now from Aniko, but from other panels this morning, central banks in this context are becoming product owners. They need to think about how do they roll this out. And I can think of the last 10 years where there's been initiatives around new innovations around the banking sector that either are really successful or complete failures, with adoption becoming minimal, that actually it gets withdrawn from service. What we want to do is try and help enable central banks and to actually focus on the bits that they understand, that they work with, and we just provide that expertise. And with that foundation, that open source platform, what we're doing is making, from a Ripple perspective, taking a copy of that open source ledger and making it available in a private context. So you don't have to use the public ledger. We've got central banks that are deploying this purely in a private context, so creating a private network and then making sure that fits their purpose, their use cases. And with that, you get all the benefits of the public capability just in a private context, where you can control the participation, you can control all the parameters of how it works, you can control the governance model. And so it takes the technology and makes it available at a domestic level. And I think the other important point is the reason why, personally, I like the XRP ledger, not just because I work at Ripple. It has a lot of fundamentals. We're not having to write smart contracts to issue a token. There's native functionality baked into the ledger. And there were far greater minds that created this technology than mine when they originally created this foundation. They built a lot of it with sort of fundamentals in mind.
Just what he's talking about here, guys, Bitcoin came out and people like David Schwartz, right, Arthur Britto, these guys saw that proof of work wasn't as it was put on a very high pedestal. And if you look at Bitcoin now, it's a great store of value for the people that believe in it, right? We're going to get these spot ETFs coming in 2024. Bitcoin is going to do really well until one day it's not, right? And right, you want to identify, like, I don't want to just own one Bitcoin for 30 grand. I'd rather go out and buy, twice as much XRP or 4 times as much XLM. I think I'm going to get a better return on my money over the next 2 to 5 years on that larger amount of quality of like XRP or Hedera, whatever it is, over Bitcoin. That's just how my mind works. And so I don't own any Bitcoin. Now, I don't think Bitcoin's a very bad thing, but David Schwartz, Arthur Britto, Jen McCaleb saw the deficiencies in Bitcoin to be this global payments network. And that is what they sat down to solve. And using consensus, right? It's not proof of stake, not proof of work, using a consensus model, they created the XRP ledger. And now it's already 10 years, he said, and it's going to stand the test of time. And that is why all of these central banks are testing a private ledger, because the technology is proven. It's been sandbox tested. They feel comfortable with it. Now, I always get this question, well, what if something's created tomorrow and it kicks XRP's ass? Great. Fantastic. I love new competition coming into the space. I'm all for it. But you got to understand, especially central banks, not just banks, but especially central banks, they're going to want a sandbox test it with their partners, with other banks for years, guys. It's not something that's going to get fast light or green lit. Now, if you're already using something like XRP and you're having to pay less than a penny per payment globally, how do you start beating that? And what does that look like? Right now, instead of a penny, is it like 1/10 of a penny or 1/100th of a penny? Does that make it cheaper? Does that make it better? I don't know, but they've already developed a system that is going to be gradually used. And that is why I'm such an advocate for XRP, because I think it's going to be massive. And I have like 5 other videos I'm going to record after this that all kind of point to me being right about that assumption. And when you spend hundreds of hours a month, thousands of hours a year for years on end, your time builds up and your knowledge builds up, and you get more comfortable with being able to talk with somebody else like yourself about it. When I started this YouTube channel, I was like, man, I really needed to up my game with my knowledge, because if you're going to be asking me a question or if I'm going to be talking about something, if I'm wrong about something, you're sure as hell going to point it out, and I don't want to feel stupid. It took me a long time to get very comfortable with where I am, and I'm learning every day, and I hope you are too. And if you've made it through this ramble, thank you so much. Please feel free to like the video, subscribe if you're not. There's like 45% of you that are not subscribed, but you keep coming back, which I don't mind, but help me grow the channel. I appreciate y'all. Let me play this.
This is a plumbing technology. This is a foundational component. So the less you can actually spend time writing code that actually injects risk and having a strong foundation, we think this is a strong benefit to central banks to focus on. How do they get the most out of this technology? How do they apply their use cases to it? And that's kind of Ripple's role in helping that education and also helping that sort of development process.
Thank you. Yeah, we know that
having a cash-like system.
Thank you. So turning back to you, Anthony, you just mentioned that you helped to build and start the Ripple cross-border payment network. So you spent a lot of time building the rules and the technical standards for interoperability. So what do you think are the most important choices here when we pursue not only cross-border payments, but also integration with the retail payment system and the banking system?
It's a good question.
I think this is really important.
Yeah.
I think if we just treat it as a independent system, it'll end up in a silo. To Joachim's point, there needs to be sort of consideration for how does this talk to the outside world. Cash is a very good example. I can walk up and give you pounds, you can give me euros. It's a really easy way of interfacing. There are existing systems that work today, but I think everybody in this room knows that there are frictions in those systems. The G20 is looking at this, and this is something that we were trying to solve for with RippleNet. So I think in its first principle, there needs to be some common protocols and standards that allow disparate systems to talk to each other in a consistent way. From a pure technology perspective, that's probably the easy bit, if I'm perfectly honest. It's the legal framework, it's the regulatory framework, it's the compliance frameworks that sit on top of that are actually difficult. Because every jurisdiction has their own interpretation of regulations, what anti-money laundering looks like, who's on a bad guys list kind of thing. So there needs to be some way of handling all of that. And also, part of that, what does settlement finality look like between two disparate systems? That might work well in one system where you've got a clear rule book. So a domestic payment scheme is a really good example of where settlement finality is defined. But when you're going between two disparate systems, what does that actually look like? They might be delivered by two different providers of two different technology states. What does that look like? Some of this requires community thinking of how do we think about standards and protocols. I can look back a little bit in history of how some of this has worked. If I send an email account from my Outlook account to your Gmail account, there's a standard protocol for that. It doesn't really care who the provider is of those systems. That's a really simplistic example. Finance is a lot more complex than that. But there needs to be those common rules of the road for achieving that. Otherwise, you're going to end up with lots of different systems. And if we look at CDCs, there's a lot of experimentation around the world with a lot of different providers. If you end up with just connecting the providers together who built their own systems and then you end up with islands. That's not the goal of what we're trying to do here, and I think that speaks to a lot of the projects that the central banks are looking at. How do we improve cross-border efficiency?
So guys, what are you talking about there is siloed islands, what the payment system today is, right? That's why you need all of these correspondent banks to be connected with each other so money can move between them, and every bank takes a piece as that payment moves its way through. We have that right now, and what they're needing to do is not only build these layer ones and these layer twos to support the layer ones, but they also need to be able to connect this new infrastructure to the existing infrastructure. So existing infrastructure can still be used, like our Visa and our MasterCards and things like that, but then it uses something like a digital asset inside of that for instant settlement, instant payment, instant settlement. So that is what they're talking about here, just to give you that context if you didn't know.
I think that there needs to be some fundamentals there, but even at a domestic level, there needs to be commonality of how do you integrate. So if I think about, at the moment, if I want to fund my CBDC wallet from my bank account, my banking system can't take account to a public address for a crypto wallet. So either that system needs to adapt, or the CBDC system, underlying platform needs to adapt, or there needs to be some common bridge protocol that looks like it. And systems have already started to look at this around the world, of bringing in cell numbers or email addresses or some other identifiers.
Digital IDs. Yep.
So there's an identity component that needs to sit over the top of this as well. And then again, that starts to touch on privacy and how much do you share. So it's fairly nuanced. The technical piece is the easy bit of actually creating a protocol that actually allows different interaction. But when you start talking about movement of value and movement of information that supports that has a regulatory framework, that's a different conversation, but it's something that has to be tackled. And that's where we're looking at working with central banks on to provide the technical expertise so that they can think about how does it apply to policy. I'd say it's a multi-layered cake. I think the analogy was somebody who was talking about earlier on. There's multiple layers to this. The technology piece is probably the easiest bit, if I'm perfectly honest.
Did somebody say cake? Cake. All right, I got a weakness for cake. I do, but it has to be like chocolate or white chocolate or anyways, I don't know where I just went there, but someone said cake and I just had the walls went white and I just saw a plate with a good slice of yummy cake on it. Tell me you like cake or what kind of cake you like. That's where we got to at the end. But I hope this is helpful, guys. A lot of really good information there, right? It's not just about creating the blockchain like the layer one, right? You have to create everything that encompasses, and all these different countries have all these different rules, and you need everybody to have similar standards. And so that's what Anthony was talking about there. And I just thought that was a fantastic 9-minute clip that went through a bunch of different stuff. We gave you some context. Guys, if you want to support the channel, there's ways to do that. In the description, there's a bunch of different things we can offer you guys. Token Metrics is something that I'm using right now, and it's really great for information. There's a link down in the description, and they also have a free account now. It used to be $20 a month. They have it free for a limited time. I don't know exactly how long they're going to keep this, but take a look at Token Metrics, guys. They have a lot of information, and in this space, information is power.